Chapter 314. The fashionably dressed beauty saw that the man she was talking to was only looking at the young man. He didn't even look back. She couldn't help but ask again, "Tell me, how much do I have to pay for you to be willing? I can pay for your friend too." She had never been so generous to a man before. After all, she didn't even need to ask for anything in the past. At first, Fujio thought that the Almighty was interested in this woman. Now that she heard the woman's words, she realized that the Almighty was being offered a price. She wanted to laugh. What should she do? "Pretty lady, are you sure you want to talk to my brother like this? He can't be moved by money." Fujio walked over with a light smile. Even the corners of her beautiful eyes were half-hooked. She leaned against Chin Mo just like that. Her left hand hit the back of the sofa, looking like a wanton in the dark. Of course, it was also extremely cool. The girls on the opposite side all blushed. The pretty lady who was clinging to Chin Mo laughed. "Little handsome, I'm giving your brother not only money, but also a bright future. You haven't debuted yet, right? If you want to be known by the public or get on a show, I can help you. But your brother won't even let me kiss him." That pretty lady glanced at Chin Mo from the corner of her eyes. She seemed to be saying, "How could there be such a cold man?" Fujio leaned back and whistled. She turned around and looked at the Almighty. "Brother Mo, a kiss from you is worth the price of a show." She wanted to tease the Almighty. "After all, you all know." But who would have thought that Chin Mo, with a cigarette between his fingers, seemed to have sobered up a little. Then he said in a calm voice, "Compared to someone who threatened to spend 10 million to sleep with me, a show is nothing." 10 million. That pretty lady frowned heavily. She was wondering why men were so arrogant. It turned out that her offer was too low. Who was it? So rich. 10 million to sleep with a person, was that person crazy? Fujio successfully shut up, because the person who threatened to spend 10 million to sleep with Almighty Chin was herself. That's right, it was her. In the cafeteria, she was the one who only saw the back of young Master Chin. Fujio, why were you so infatuated?" However, it had been a long time since that incident. Did she have to be the Almighty's bad name? All of Chin Mo's unhappiness faded with the youngster's downcast handsome face. Sure enough, there wasn't anything wrong with him. It was just that this kid was too good at flirting, causing him to have an illusion that he shouldn't have had in that instant. Fujio was still depressed. She was really depressed, and she didn't try to hide the expression on her face. This made things even more interesting for Chin Mo. "However, if someone dares to raise the condition of 10 million yuan, I can agree to it. Let's see how he will sleep with me and not the other way around." With that said, Chin Mo leaned towards Fujio. His shirt was still unbuttoned, and his breathing was deep. "What do you think, Lord Joe?" Fujio completely understood the Almighty's speech pattern. He even called her Lord Joe. Seriously. She finally understood why Baby Fang's back would stiffen whenever the Almighty called her Baby Fang. Chapter 315. That beauty really felt that the man was paying too much attention to the young man. Thinking about it again, there were other little vixens competing with her for a man. She couldn't help but clench her teeth and make up her mind. "It's just 10 million. I have it too, provided that you can make me happy, handsome. Apart from money, I can also give you more prospects." Hearing that, Chin Mo just laughed in a low voice. His eyes swept over that silver head, and then he put his eyes on the wine bottle beside him. He said 2 words very coldly, "Not interested." She was rejected in front of so many people. The beauty's face turned ugly as well. Especially when a few people around them laughed happily. She couldn't hide her arrogance anymore. "Aren't you celebrities out to sell yourselves? Why aren't you interested in me? Teasing was one thing, and hearing others talk about the Almighty was another. Fujio raised her head and raised her eyebrows. Who told you that we are celebrities? Who told you that we are out to sell ourselves? Stop pretending. Just admit it, it will be good for you. That beauty's attitude was very indifferent. Fujio chuckled and put her arm on the Almighty's shoulder. Her black leather jacket hit the dark wooden table as she leaned forward. That posture made her look like a demon. Do you know why my brother isn't interested in you? Fujio asked. Do you know why my brother is not interested in you? Because he is my mistress. I was the one who threatened to spend 10 million to sleep with him, which means that we are not short of money. Do you understand? When Fujio said that, there was a slight curve at the corner of her mouth, and the black diamonds on her ears shone with a mysterious light. It was very rebellious. If it were any other time, that beauty would definitely be mesmerized by him. But the young man's words were like a muffled thunder that struck her. She hated gay men the most. She really didn't expect to meet one in real life. After all, that man looked so perfect, how could he be gay? She didn't even think in that direction. She finally understood why that man would look at the young man like that, as if he wanted to swallow him whole. That kind of gaze was too deep, so deep that it made people feel sexy just by looking at it. She had thought that it was a characteristic of men to begin with. After all, the book said that the more abstinent and domineering a man was, the stronger his ability and needs in that aspect would be. Therefore, he would naturally emit strong hormones. Only now did she realize that the man's hormones only targeted the youth. Not only did the beauty feel that her enthusiasm had been wasted, but she had also asked a fake man out. The exquisite makeup on her face was about to crack with her anger. She clenched her hands and said, "You perverts are so disgusting." Fujio raised her eyebrows. Chin Mo's gaze turned cold. But before he could say anything, the people around him looked at the beauty with disapproving expressions. What? It's obvious that the man and the young man like each other. She's calling him disgusting because he rejected her. From the very beginning, her words have been very harsh. No matter what, we shouldn't judge anyone's sexual orientation. If you don't like it, just leave. After all, that circle is messy. I don't like it either, but I won't call it disgusting. Tokyo was more open-minded, and people were more rational in this aspect. Seeing that beauty like that, they all started discussing. That beauty had never suffered such a loss before. Her eyes turned vicious, and she stood up with her purse. Chapter 316. That beauty's name was Junko. She often came to this hotel, and she was a VIP customer. She got to know a lot of people here. She couldn't tolerate being humiliated. She had overheard the conversation between the two of them just now, and they had spoken in Chinese. It seemed that they weren't from here. Although they spoke in Japanese, it couldn't hide the fact that they were from here. Since they were from China, she would just beat them up. Anyway, they couldn't say anything. Junko walked into the darkness, and the beauty behind her was still trying to persuade her. Forget it, forget it. Let's go find someone else to play with. Don't be angry. Besides, they didn't spend your money, so there's nothing to lose. Who said there's nothing to lose? You're affecting my mood. Some people were just like that. They thought they were right even when they did something wrong. Her friend was helpless. She couldn't keep up with her, so she took her bag and went to find someone else to play with. She came here to have fun, and she couldn't control Junko. But it was a pity that those two handsome faces were wasted. She knew Junko's tricks very well, and the gangsters here were very familiar with Junko. It wouldn't be a problem to deal with those two Chinese people. Sigh, what a pity, the chatter in the card bag didn't stop. especially after knowing that Fu Jiu and Qin Mo were a couple. The women on the other side became even more excited. I see. I was wondering why such a handsome man would be with Junko. She probably hit on him, but the two of them look so compatible, especially the way Lil Shou is resting on Lil Attacker's shoulder. It's so cool. It makes people want to crush him. Fu Jiu, the second time. This was the second time that she was called a girl today. Even though her movements were so aggressive, it was obvious. Hey, beauties, just look at her movements. She was such a man. What on earth was wrong with her? Speaking of which, sometimes Fu Jiu didn't understand why the girls were so excited. In fact, gay love was the same as lesbian love. The circle was indeed messy, and there would be many problems. It wasn't as beautiful as they thought. And there were many AIDS carriers. Fu Jiu lived on Fifth Avenue, so she knew this very well. But she respected everyone's sexual orientation, especially when there was a parade on Fifth Avenue every year. She often joined the parade and spoke up for love and democracy. However, shouldn't the Almighty thank her? After all, she was the one who forced the Almighty to retreat. With this thought in mind, Fu Jiu turned around to ask for a reward. Who knew that the Almighty would raise his hand and pull her over? His breath landed on her face just like that. With a seductive smile, he said, "Since you're our Lord Jiu's mistress, of course, I have to give Lord Jiu some benefits." Lord Jiu, as the mistress, where do you think I should kiss first? Fu Jiu frowned. The plot should not have developed this way. The Almighty was indeed abnormal. It's here. Qin Mo stretched out his finger, and his cold fingertip touched Fu Jiu's forehead. As he narrowed his eyes, his eyelashes cast a faint shadow on her face. Here, or here. At the end of his sentence, Qin Mo's fingers rubbed Fu Jiu's lips. Chapter 317. The experience of someone else's fingers lingering on her lips. Fu Jiu had never experienced it before. That was why she was a little stunned. Qin Mo's eyes were very dark, and it was an extremely deep darkness. Very seductive. The softness between his fingers was something he had never felt before. The friction was like the prelude to a passionate kiss. The people standing at the side were all dumbfounded. At that moment, even the sound of the noisy music in his ears had faded quite a bit. Those beauties thought that this scene would end with a fierce kiss. They were even prepared to take a deep breath. Unexpectedly, in the next second, the youngster laughed. She leaned forward, and her face was very close to Qin Mo. "Brother Mo, I'm the one who protected you. Even if you want to kiss me, I should be the one to take the initiative." After saying that, Fu Jiu stood up handsomely. With one hand on the sofa, she bent down and looked at Qin Mo from the side with a very beautiful posture. Her thin lips kissed the left side of Qin Mo's face near his chin. Qin Mo's pupils dilated, and he frowned subconsciously. That wasn't a kiss at all. It was more like some rich young master flirting with a beauty. Then, there was a faint, proud smile. Looking at the youngster's face, Qin Mo's eyes deepened. Even though the action of his thin lips brushing across his cheek was too rough, he could still feel what it felt like. It was like being caressed by a feather. Very light, very numb, but Fu Jiu was really happy this time. Even the Almighty's expression was different. It was obvious that he didn't expect such an action from her. But in that situation, a person like the Almighty, who didn't care about what others thought of him, might get so angry that he would kiss her. Flirting back like this was the best way to deal with it. And messing around between brothers shouldn't be a big deal. At most, the Almighty would activate his freezing skill again, and she would be the one to take the knife. But looking at the Almighty's expression, he could kiss her at any time to teach her a lesson. She had better get away first. Fujiu thought about it and was about to lift her head to retreat. She didn't know why, but her wrist was suddenly pulled back by the Almighty. The Almighty's expression wasn't quite the same as usual. He didn't have the usual gentleness, but his handsome face was dark and fierce. What was going on? Fujiu didn't have time to react. A loud clang was heard. Something hit Qin Mo's back and head. That noise made Fujiu's eyes widen. Qin Mo lowered his lids and turned his body sideways. His arm was behind her, protecting her on the sofa. The man's black hair was already wet, and he didn't have his usual business aura. Fujiu could clearly see his drooping eyelashes, which were evil and wild. That kind of environment didn't make him look the least bit disheveled. On the contrary, when he lowered his head, it gave Fujiu a thrilling illusion. Fujiu didn't have much reaction. She saw that the big man behind Qin Mo was still holding a wine bottle. Her eyes, which were originally harmless in front of Qin Mo, suddenly darkened. It was completely dark. This was the real her. The back of Qin Mo's head wasn't bleeding, but at that moment, he hadn't held on to the youngster. After the young man got up, without saying a word, he picked up the wine bottle beside him and smashed it at the other party. Chapter 318. This time, there was blood. Those guys didn't have time to react at all. Fujiu had already kicked one of them to the ground. Her actions were ruthless, and her eyes were cold. She only kicked one person, and she didn't intend to stop at all. No one expected that the young man could be so ruthless. Junko's face turned pale as she watched from the side. She said to the people next to her, "Why are you still standing there? Hurry up." Those gangsters finally reacted, and they were about to rush over. However, before they could get half a meter away from the young man, a strong gust of wind came right at their faces. It was Qin Mo. He picked up the wine bottle on the wooden table with his right hand and smashed that guy's head. His skills were even more horrifying than Fujiu's. His fingers were stained with blood, but it didn't affect his temperament at all. His perfect abdominal muscles were full of smooth lines. As he waved the wine glass, the onlookers burst into exclamations. If someone was too beautiful even in a fight, then he would be really handsome. Qin Mo was such a person. His tall and slender silhouette matched with his deep eyes and calm expression. Those who would fight felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts. Baka! The people who started the fight cursed in a low voice. Who the hell did Junko mess with this time? Why was he so difficult to deal with? Where was the Chinese soft-footed shrimp? When the pain came, they only felt dizzy for a while. However, the man didn't seem to pay attention to them. Compared to them, he seemed to care more about that silver-haired young man. Those people then noticed that the young man hadn't stopped since the beginning. Was he going to kick Kumamoto to death? Kumamoto was a big guy, and he had never been beaten like this before. But now, he didn't even have the strength to fight back. Even if he held his head, he couldn't resist the pain. It was too ruthless. The strength of those kicks on his body. Damn it! His back must have been injured. Stop, stop. Kumamoto was in so much pain that he almost begged. But Fujiu only curled up her lips and kicked him again. Then she bent down in a very handsome posture, lifted Kumamoto up, and gave him a heavy punch. Stop. Are you dreaming? Fujiu had to admit that she couldn't control herself. That was because she had never expected the Almighty to be injured. Moreover, he was injured because of her. This could not be tolerated in any way. Which hand did you use to hold the glass just now? Fujiu looked at the man who was beaten to the ground by her. Her eyes wandered, and she looked like a devil that walked out of a comic book. She asked in a low voice as if there was no one else around, "Is it this one?" As she spoke, she looked at the Kumamoto's right hand. "Or this one?" "Oh, of course, I can also break your back. After all, you hit my brother's back, right?" When Fujio said this, her murderous aura was really strong. He wasn't the kind of person who could be easily bluffed. Instead, it was a genuine killing intent. At that moment, Kumamoto thought he was going to die. Fujio smiled and lifted her long legs again. But at that moment, an arm stretched out towards Fujio. Just 3 years ago, she was almost caught by someone. She couldn't see what that person looked like because the light was too strong and blurred her vision. After she finished the last case, she thought she was safe. She blended into the crowd, changed her clothes, and even put on a wig, just like every girl going to a masquerade party. She held a purse in her hand and wore a black robe with a hat. She had a faint smile on her face and left the policeman behind beautifully. Chapter 320. The delivery truck that had been parked in front of the ball suddenly turned on its headlights. All of the light beams were like radars, all locked onto her. Just then, a person jumped out of the truck. His movements were very handsome and neat. He didn't look like a regular customer that she had met before. The person stood with his back to the light. Other than the school uniform he was wearing, she could roughly tell his age. There was nothing else. The lights were so bright that she couldn't see anything from her position. He stood there with one hand in his pocket, his voice calm. "I've heard a lot about you, 0Z." At that time, she didn't expect anyone to recognize her. Fortunately, she was wearing a long black robe, dressed as a comic villain, the Grim Reaper. The large black hat on the robe gave her a good cover. So much so that no one could see her real face, let alone see her expression. The police officers rushed out from behind the man. She heard some people asking in disbelief, "Are you sure it's her? She's a lady. Who told you that Z is a guy?" That person is a high school student, but in front of the police, he seems to be in control of the situation. But the information we received. The police wanted to say something, but the person laughed. The man chuckled. "Yes, it was your accurate intelligence that allowed Zero to roam freely for half a year." The police. Why was this Chinese person hired by F so difficult to communicate with? Was he bullying them because they didn't know how to speak? If it wasn't for the fact that the timing wasn't right, she would have liked to give that person a thumbs up. Because she could clearly hear the police gnashing their teeth after the man finished speaking. However, that person was here to capture him. That was another matter altogether. She was very clear about the principle of distinguishing between friend and foe. Although she admired the other party's intelligence, using that kind of intelligence on her was a little tricky. She had never met such a difficult opponent. The moment he appeared, he intercepted her, and she didn't know when this person had come to the Fifth Avenue. However, this was the Five Great Ways after all. It was her territory. How could she let an outsider capture her just like that? It had always been her style of doing things to keep a hand in everything. She did not raise her head. Instead, she smiled and raised her right hand. "Smith, you should recognize this." Smith was the person in charge of Fifth Avenue. When he saw what Z was holding, his expression changed. "Bomb, time bomb." She smiled faintly. "That's right, it's a time bomb. How about this, since you've caught me, I'll give you a chance. This time bomb is nearby. Do you want to catch me or dismantle it? Choose one." Smith gritted his teeth. It was obvious that the safety of the personnel was the most important. "Don't listen to her. There's no bomb." Chapter 321. Cold sweat broke out on Smith's forehead when he heard Z's words. It was true. Z's style of doing things was to leave a warning every time. She would also use many online platforms to tell everyone why she was doing this. Those people were all guilty of heinous crimes. But even so, doing this would be challenging their authority. So he had to catch Z. And capture her alive. What should we do? Smith couldn't make up his mind. The person was insistent. She wouldn't plant a bomb here. All the records show that Z wouldn't hurt ordinary people during her operations. This time will be no exception. She's playing psychological warfare with you. Smith was in a dilemma. Although the person she hired was a psychologist. What if Z really planted a bomb here? There were so many people on Fifth Avenue. If there was an explosion, it would be over. Z was really cunning. Every time, she would blend in with the crowd and pick the most crowded places to attack. Since Mr. Smith is having a hard time deciding, I'll do something small for you to see. She knew that Hoshino was ready. She moved her finger. Bang! The sound of an explosion came from not far away. Smith's expression changed. He shouted, "Stop! Z, stop it right now. Don't be nervous. This is only the first one. There are 7 or 8 others buried nearby. Mr. Smith, I just said that you have to make a choice. Also, if you shoot randomly, you will hit a bomb, F***CKU. Smith thought of this sentence in Hwasha at that moment. He was really annoying. At that time, when she saw Smith's expression, she knew that she was about to succeed. So, she calmly put her hand behind her back and touched the magnet that was stuck to her back. How could she not have some escape tools when she was in this world? As expected, Smith's face turned green when he heard her words. He shouted, "Don't shoot." The sound of an explosion could cause panic. The crowd was no longer as calm as before. Once they heard that there were more bombs, they started to panic and wanted to escape. Taking advantage of that moment, she forcefully tore it apart. The powerful suction from the iron sucking device caused her to fall back dozens of meters effortlessly. Her entire body was directly glued to the celebratory iron horse. It would be a lie to say that it didn't hurt, but the most important thing was to escape. Because it was obvious that the person had his eyes on her when she retreated. It was precisely because his movements were too methodical that she remembered this moment. If it weren't for her escape, he would have grabbed onto her hand with one move. In fact, at that time, he did grab her long sleeve, but the fabric was too fragile and broke. But even so, she, who had never shown her face in front of others, revealed a flaw. That was her long hair, which was exposed outside. She couldn't care less. In the midst of the chaos, she heard the police say, F***CK. Z tricked him again. There was no bomb. They were firecrackers. The sound just now was from firecrackers. At that time, she thought that there would be a lot of trouble. She didn't expect that after she came out for more than 10 days, that person had already disappeared from the fifth path. That person's identity was also quite mysterious. The reason why she called him mysterious was because even she had not found out who that person was. The only thing he knew was that the man was from Hwasha, just like him. Fujio raised her eyes again and looked at Chin Mo, whose white shirt was still stained with blood. Chapter 322. Chin Mo looked down and saw that the young man was looking at him. He didn't know what he was thinking, but his eyes were a little numb. He thought for a moment. The kid was probably scared. That's right, the Almighty thought that his little brother was scared. Maybe it was a natural protective mentality. Chin Mo had automatically ignored how ruthless Fujio was when she kicked him just now. Anyway, the young man looked dazed, and there was still a little blood on his face. He was no different from a broken kid. Although he was still too handsome. But he was still dazed. Chin Mo's eyes couldn't help but warm up when he thought of this. He took out his wallet and put the compensation amount on the bar counter. Because the compensation amount was too much, the hotel bodyguards who rushed over didn't know what to do next. After all, the things on the ground weren't worth that much money. Chin Mo grabbed Fujio and walked through the noisy crowd as if there was no one else around. The lights above his head were still flashing, and the music was the kind that could make one's heart race. If it was someone else wearing a white shirt in a nightclub, you would think that he was conservative. But that person was the Almighty, and everything seemed very different. Not only was he untainted by the mud, but he also had that kind of abstinence and indifference, like a god who had fallen from heaven. The youth he was holding in his hand was extremely demonic. With a black leather jacket and silver hair, he was simply an illusion of a demon. Both of them were so good-looking, but their temperaments were different. One black and one white, which created such an impactful scene. The Fujoshis in the crowd felt their hearts racing. This kind of hand-holding was so sweet. Oh, they didn't know why this man was so domineering. What did he want to do with the young man? But the fight just now was so cool. So cool that even now, when they saw Chin Mo's side profile, they couldn't believe that there was such a perfect man in the world. Hearing the gasps around her, Fujio curled up her lips. It was quite interesting to be with the Almighty. Even the fight was so fun. The bodyguards didn't stop them. And there were still broken wine bottles on the ground behind them. The Almighty must have been a person who liked to pick fights in nightclubs in the past. Fujio was wrong about this. Chin Mo never picked fights in Jiang City. Who would be stupid enough to pick a fight with the young master of the Chin family? Unless he wanted to die. Chin Mo also went to nightclubs because it was hard for him to fall asleep. None of the young masters from the military region dared to provoke them. Especially since everyone knew that Chin Mo didn't like people touching him. Therefore, he didn't even dare to arrange a girl for him. It wasn't like they hadn't made arrangements before. Chin Mo took a puff of his cigarette and told them to go where they should go. That was the most chaotic year in Chin Mo's life, but he didn't do anything out of line. Therefore, many people thought that young Master Chin liked men, so they kept sending young men to the private room. Chin Mo laughed. He swirled the wine in his hand, exuding an aura of gentleness. I'm a man with a handle. You want me to touch a man with a handle? Ha, I don't have that hobby. Get lost. This was what he said to the young masters in the military compound. Then, he stood up and buttoned his shirt. He was the cold and inviolable young Master Chin again. It seemed like a joke, but it was filled with warning. Ever since then, no one dared to mess with Chin Mo anymore. Chapter 324. If the Almighty was really that person, that was even less of a problem. Because in that person's eyes, she had always been a woman. And now, she was a boy. Fujio thought about it and lay down on the bed. So, if we follow this equation, then Fujio's identity gave her great protection. She couldn't let the Almighty know that she was a girl. If the Almighty was really that person, with that person's style of doing things, he would definitely have checked on her once. Thinking about it this way, it seemed to explain why the Almighty wanted to catch her after seeing her in the game and knowing that she was a hacker. Was it just because she knew how to play games? Fujio put a question mark in her head. What if it wasn't because she was playing games, but because the Almighty suspected that she was Z? That would explain why the Almighty always set traps for her when he was talking to her. And he always looked like he was watching over her. He probably found out that Fu Jiu hadn't been to Fifth Avenue 3 years ago, and she was still a middle school student at that time, so it was even more impossible for her to be Z. That was why being a high school student was such a good identity. The more Fu Jiu thought about it, the more her lips curled up. Qin Mo, who was lying on the other bed, didn't hear any movement. He sat up with his long legs on the ground and said in a calm voice, "Are you still afraid?" Fu Jiu heard Qin Mo's question and knew that the Almighty seemed to have misunderstood something. But at this time, if she said she wasn't afraid, she would really give herself away. She could only reply, "A little, there's always blood in front of me." She didn't like blood, and when she realized it, she realized that she had used too much strength. Fu Jiu couldn't even imagine what would have happened if the Almighty hadn't pulled her into his arms in time and covered her eyes. Would she have crushed that person's internal organs? Fu Jiu shook her head, as if she wanted to get rid of these emotions. It was indeed a serious matter. Who knew that the Almighty's next words would be, "If you're afraid, come and sleep"? Fu Jiu was shocked. He wasn't stunned by those words. It was the Almighty's tone that said, "Because you are my little brother, I will indulge you. No one else should even think about touching my bedding." Fu Jiu shook her head decisively. "Brother Mo, I don't sleep well. That's all. It's fine as long as I know Brother Mo is beside me. Sleep over there." Hee hee, what a joke. Wasn't this asking her to walk right into a trap? But the Almighty must be coaxing her like a child again. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked her to go over and sleep with him. Unfortunately, at this moment, Qin Mo saw the youngster as a rebellious boy trying to be brave. Qin Mo wanted to leave the youngster some self-respect, so he turned to turn on the table lamp. Fu Jiu couldn't open her eyes at this time, but she could still feel the gentle light. It was so strange that there was such a man in the world. Cold as ice, black-bellied, but gentle to the bone. The premise is, you have to be his younger brother. When Fu Jiu thought of this, she couldn't help but let out a long sigh. The more it was like this, the more likely the Almighty would retaliate after finding out her secret. So, let's hurry up and finish the training. Chapter 325. The next day. The sky wasn't completely bright yet. Fu Jiu stood in the bathroom and began to check if there was anything wrong with her. After yesterday, she became more vigilant. The door must be locked. In front of the mirror, she wrapped the bandages and put on her sweater and coat. After washing her hair, it looked even fluffier. When she opened the door, she could see the Almighty's peaceful sleeping face. His hands were on his chest, and when his eyelashes fell, she could see circles and circles of shadows. He looked like a mixed-blood aristocrat. Who did the Almighty look like this? His genes were so good. Forget it. While the Almighty was sleeping, she would take the phone and look at it for a while. She hadn't replied to Baby Feng's WeChat message from yesterday. But she didn't expect that when she got the phone, it wasn't Baby Feng's urgent call on the screen. It was his brother, Manager Feng. Manager Feng was very direct. "Z, go on Weibo and post photos. Don't be like CEO Qin. That guy's Weibo is full of weeds." Fu Jiu thought about it and replied, "I don't like to post on Weibo, but I can do it for the Almighty. What do you think?" Manager Feng was still at the domestic airport, planning to fly to Tokyo. After dealing with the business in Jiang City, of course, he had to go to Tokyo. This was a friendly match. Although it was a friendly match, once the country collapsed, its meaning changed completely. If they lost here, how could they have the face to attend the national competition? Manager Feng was only thinking about this, but when he saw the WeChat message, he immediately became excited. "Do it for CEO Qin. Are you sure?" "Yes, I have the Almighty's password before." Isn't it just the same password as the game? Fujio lay back on the bed lazily with a lollipop in her mouth and a phone in her hand. Only then did she feel alive, and her interest was aroused. Manager Feng thought about it. With CEO Chin's indulgence of Spade, it shouldn't be a problem to post on Weibo, so he agreed without hesitation. Then post it with photos. Fujio smiled lightly and replied, no problem. Even if she wanted to post photos, she also needed to post photos. The Almighty probably didn't like to show his face in public, but it would be a pity if Qin Mo's fans didn't enjoy the benefits of such a gorgeous sleeping face. Therefore, after Fujio got out of bed, she tilted her body, and took the photo from the right to the left. She used the morning light to blur Qin Mo's handsome side profile, leaving only a smooth curve that made people think of how handsome the person in the photo was just by looking at it. Of course, there was also that handsome and dignified sleeping posture. The Almighty was too clean. It was as if he had fused with the light of dawn. Fujio's smiling eyes froze for a moment when she saw the photo she had taken. There was no need to ask anymore. She was almost certain. The Almighty was that person from back then. Because the curve of his chin was highly similar to the memory from 3 years ago. He couldn't see the person's face clearly, so he had once asked who this person was. He immediately had the answer. However, Fujio only paused for a moment. Since they had already figured it out yesterday, there was no need to be conflicted now. And one thing was, she recognized the Almighty. The Almighty didn't recognize her, which was good. Chapter 326. At this time, she had to thank Manager Feng for the follow-up measures that Almighty Qin didn't remember the password for his official Weibo account. Manager Feng changed Almighty Qin's official Weibo password to the game password. That was why Fujio came up so smoothly. Of course, she had another way. As long as she took Almighty Qin's laptop, she would be able to find the preview record and use it as a starting point to crack the password. However, now that she knew that the Almighty was the person who had made her suffer a loss before, she didn't know what to do. Of course, Fujio wouldn't leave any traces behind. The Almighty was so smart. He had to be on guard. But such a picture was taken. All the Qin fans exploded. Holy sh*t, what did I just see? What did I see? Early in the morning, I'm just checking in as usual and watering Almighty Qin's Weibo. I never expected Almighty Qin to post on Weibo, but what is this? Photos. Sleeping photos. Hee, I must be dreaming. This is the first time I've seen Almighty Qin's selfie. Oh, he's so handsome that I'm crying. Why does Almighty Qin look so inviolable even when he's asleep? I'm turning gay. The man upstairs is crazy. Count me in, I want to be gay too. Mom, my nose is bleeding. It was not only Qin fans who felt this way. Even the team members who had woken up early were stunned. One of them posted, "Captain, what's wrong with you?" Captain. Terror. Lin Feng scrolled through Weibo while shouting towards the bathroom, "Yunhu, come out and take a look." Did Captain suffer a shock? Yunhu walked over, his upper body naked and his lower body in a pair of black pants. His manly abs were on full display, still damp. What's wrong? Look at this photo. Lin Feng raised his phone for Yunhu to take a look while he was jealous of his figure. Yunhu glanced up and paused. Captain, send a photo. On Weibo? Or was it a sleeping photo? F***CK. Is Supreme Alliance finally using Qin Mo's beauty to fight for territory with us? This was forwarded by Hei Qi, one of the top 3 in the country. Unforgivable. Why does this have to be a world where looks are the most important? Unfair. This is really unfair. Hey Chi, also known as Fatty Hey. Seeing him speak, the crowd was amused. A clever netizen commented, "Be a good boy, Fatty. Don't mess around. You're even worse off when it comes to your figure." The dark-skinned Fatty looked at his own fat arms and his bulging beer belly, then looked at the man in the photo who could almost be photographed in a magazine. He instantly felt as if he had been dealt 10,000 blows. "Ha ha ha, big Fatty, don't be sad. Come and cry on Uncle's shoulder." Coco had always loved to play online. As soon as he heard that his captain had posted a photo on Weibo, he immediately rushed over to join in the fun. Black Fatty. Go to hell. Of course, apart from these, there was also a post that caused quite a stir. Because the person who forwarded the message was none other than Xiao Jing, the captain of the national champion team. His message was very much in line with his taciturn character. There was only a question mark. By the way, there was also Meng on Weibo. Seeing Xiao Jing's Weibo post, Qin Mo and Xiao Jing became even more excited. "Almighty Xiao, just admit it. Do you only care about Almighty Qin?" I couldn't help it when I saw Almighty Qin's photo of him sleeping. Not bad, this is very Almighty Xiao. Chapter 327. Yes, who took the photo? This angle, this lighting, they knew Almighty Qin didn't like to show his face, so they deliberately blurred Almighty Qin's face, leaving only that graceful arc and Almighty Qin's unique noble temperament. The appearance of such a magnificent sleeping face was so sudden that Qin Mo's fans were so excited that they forgot the most important question. Now they were reminded of it. Another wave of heated discussion came. As an 18-year-old selfie lover, I can responsibly tell the beauties that this angle is impossible to take a selfie, and the selfie stick is useless, unless it's with the help of other external forces. I think even if Almighty Qin took a selfie, he wouldn't use a selfie stick. Let me summarize what the 2 floors above said. The photo was definitely taken by someone else. So, who is this someone else? From the photo, Almighty Qin probably hasn't woken up yet. Who could be next to Almighty Qin when he was sleeping? I have something to report. Isn't the Supreme Alliance training in Tokyo now? It said that 2 people share a room, you know. According to Almighty Qin's personality, he would definitely live alone. Our Almighty Qin is very obsessed with cleanliness, everyone knows that. Maybe it's Manager Feng, that's the only answer I can think of. I don't think it's right. Would Almighty Qin open the door and let Manager Feng take a photo of his sleeping face? Almighty Qin would only smile at Manager Feng and ask him to leave, so this answer doesn't make sense. That's right. This was the reaction their captain would have. In front of their captain, Manager Feng's foxtail was especially restrained, probably because he knew he couldn't beat the captain. So, what was going on? As an internal member of the Supreme Alliance, Lin Feng also couldn't figure out who took this photo at this time. According to yesterday's room allocation, the captain did sleep alone. At this time, 8:20 in the morning, no one would dare to enter the captain's room, right? Only student Feng in the suite guessed the answer after seeing the Weibo post. The person who took this photo was very likely his idol. Why? Why did Almighty Qin become the protagonist of everything he imagined? In his fantasy, he woke up with his idol, took a photo with him while washing his face, and posted it on Weibo. His brother's mission was to post a Weibo post every day after becoming a professional player to gain popularity. In the end, student Feng felt wronged and needed to calm down. On the other side, after Fujio posted on Weibo, she logged out and sent an OK gesture to Manager Feng. Manager Feng also saw the photo, but he didn't reply. Instead, he silently looked up at the sky covered by the haze outside Jiang City Airport. This has nothing to do with him. He was a man about to get on a plane. Whoa. Little spade, good luck. Seeing that manager phone didn't reply to her message, Fujio thought that he had boarded the plane, so she didn't care. She got up, took a lollipop from the bedside table, and put it in her mouth. She heard that there was a mobile version of the hero. She could download it on her phone and register to level up. However, at this time, the fans on Weibo had all turned into all-round detectives. Even some of the members of the other battle teams couldn't help but send private messages to Lin Feng. Chapter 328. At this moment, Yunhu glanced at the photo on Weibo again. He took a sip of mineral water. I can roughly guess who it is. You can guess. Lin Feng jumped up in excitement, grabbing onto Yunhu's arm. Who is it? Who is it? Yunhu glanced down at his fair collarbone, frowning. Then he enlarged the photo. Take your time, there's a bright spot. Since you already know, why didn't you tell me directly? Lin Feng wanted to pull his hair again. Yunhu pulled his shirt over his head. Because I wanted to use this chance to train your slow reflexes. I can give you a hint, Captain might not have slept alone last night. When Lin Feng heard this, he knew it was impossible to get an answer from Yunhu. But Captain didn't sleep alone. So exciting. What's the bright spot? Lin Feng caressed his chin, his big round eyes looking at the photo on Weibo. Why couldn't he see any bright spot? The brightest spot was the captain himself. Even though his face wasn't very clear, it was especially well defined under the light. That faint shadow was like an angel whose wings had been broken and was lying in the holy light, dazzling everyone's eyes. Who could see anything else? But once intelligence was involved, it was a huge problem. Lin Feng lowered his head, staring at the photo carefully. Still nothing. But even if he couldn't see it, it didn't mean that the smart MO and GOCP fans couldn't see it. Of course, there were some smart old Qin fans who weren't CP fans. Beauties, look carefully, don't you think this photo is weird? What's weird? Cut off the picture, the arrow points to the lollipop, black ring, and some eye drops on the bedside table. Let's not talk about the latter, just the lollipop and black ring. The Almighty never wears a ring. Fine, let's just say the Almighty bought one for himself when he went to Tokyo. Let's have a good half-cent lollipop. The Almighty doesn't like sweets, much less eating lollipops. Who do you think the lollipop belongs to? Someone with a tacit understanding passing by. Single dogs are fed another bowl of dog food. They don't want to talk about it so early in the morning. When they go to work, they have the same tacit understanding. Wait a minute, brothers and sisters above, why don't I understand? What do you mean? It's obvious who the lollipop belongs to. Last night, that person slept in the same room as Almighty Qin. Today, the person who took the photo is, you know. As a fan of Big Spade, I understand. Super +1. My Big Spade is being naughty again, the candy caught me off guard. Some of the younger fans still didn't understand. They still thought that Almighty Qin had shot it himself, and that he shouldn't be implicating others. Some Spade Z fans are too much. Do they have to link our Almighty Qin and Spade Z together? In fact, the first person to come up with this theory wasn't a Spade fan, but an old Qin fan. It was obvious that their Almighty had slept with Spade Z. What else was there to say? After all, they were all people who truly liked Almighty Qin and didn't want to cause trouble for him, so they ignored him. I'm also a fan of Spade Z. I couldn't accept what you said at first, but after seeing this post, I feel that Almighty is quite righteous. Sister Turtle really wanted to ask them, what exactly did that person clarify? Where was the integrity? But she resisted. In the past, when she was writing for a website, she had encountered the same thing. Sometimes, being strong didn't mean being invincible. There were many people who had thoughts that you couldn't see through. Chapter 330. Originally, she thought that her understanding would backfire. Because in this world, there would always be people who would believe some disguised words. Her big spade wasn't a person who could disguise, but the other party was. So, she wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Especially when it came to protecting Spade Z. She had to be calmer and win with experience. Fortunately, she wasn't fighting alone. As soon as her it came out, a lot of people reposted her, including those who really liked Spade Z and only focused on the passion that Spade Z brought them. They used it as one after another to prove their strong and powerful existence. My big spade did it on purpose. Such a domineering attack would definitely leave evidence that he and Almighty Qin are sleeping together. Ha! Attack? Are you sure? Almighty Qin won't do it. I'll just wait for Almighty Qin to wake up and check Weibo. Yes, according to Almighty Qin's character, there will be two endings, one is to block Big Spade, the other is to sleep with Big Spade. Just like that, the scene changed again. An aura full of love spread out. That person is still posting to make his presence known. Sorry, people who really liked Spade Z wouldn't have any interaction with you. If you want to gain popularity, you can feel it yourself with a look. Lin Feng was still moved and frightened by Little Spade's success in sleeping with Captain. He turned his head and said to Yun Hu, "That's not right, it was Little Feng Shang who slept with Little Spade, how did he change to Captain? Do you think there was nothing between them last night?" According to Little Spade's character, he would definitely. Even if Little Spade had ulterior motives towards Captain, it wouldn't be a big deal. Obviously, there will be two situations. One is that he was beaten up by Captain and thrown out, and the other is that the person who was slept with was him, not Captain. Yun Hu was indeed the best player in Supreme Alliance other than the Almighty. He hit the nail on the head with one sentence. But Little Spade is really charming, I can see that someone is protecting him. Protecting? You mean those at S from Spade fans? Lin Feng wasn't stupid. They have a good grasp of the wind direction, otherwise someone would take the opportunity to rise. After saying this, Lin Feng became excited again. Little Spade is indeed a fresh stream in our Supreme Alliance. He dared to take a photo of Captain and even use Captain's account to post on Weibo. Why could he use the Captain's account to post on Weibo? I'm sure Captain didn't post it himself, but how did Little Spade do it? You hacked Captain's system. I don't think so. Yun Hu tapped on the web page on his phone. Our team's official Weibo isn't active, which means that Feng Yi knows about this. It's very likely that Little Spade got Feng Yi's approval before posting on Weibo. Otherwise, do you think Manager Feng, who values money as much as his life, wouldn't repost such an interactive photo? He's running away, and if the Captain finds out, he'll be held responsible. That makes sense. Lin Feng slapped his forehead. Ayaya, isn't Little Spade in trouble? I wonder how Captain will punish him. I really want to see. Achoo. Fujio logged out of Hero's page and logged back into the official Weibo account. Her slender fingers rubbed her nose carelessly, and her eyes paused. She was about to look at the comments that had been at S. She heard a low chuckle coming from her left side. Why are you sneezing all of a sudden? Ha! Chapter 331. As soon as Fujio turned around, she was met with a pair of deep eyes, which inexplicably gave off a hazy and inviolable feeling. Did you catch a cold yesterday, or are you feeling unwell? The Almighty was still lying on the bed, the pillow pressed against his ear. His features were as handsome as a comic book, and a few strands of black hair fell on his forehead, the ends of the hair falling on his eyelashes. Even the smell of the hotel seemed to have sublimated on him. It was light and pleasant to the nose. But it didn't look good for the Almighty to wake up at this time. She had just replied to a post by someone called Sister Turtle, and she was going to check out other ads. Well, actually, it didn't matter what they were. What mattered was her reply. "I'm so handsome, of course I'm the main." She had thought that her reply would be buried among all the comments. And the Almighty might not even see it. After all, the Almighty didn't like Weibo, and he definitely wouldn't go to her official Weibo to check the replies one by one. But Fujio's fingers paused, and she naturally moved her phone away. "No, I'm fine." "Oh." Chin Mo looked at her movements and raised his eyebrows. He lifted the quilt with his fingers and walked over slowly. Chin Mo wasn't wearing a shirt, so his seductive waistline and well-defined chest were exposed. His mermaid lines could be seen clearly, and he looked very oppressive. Fujio thought that no matter how powerful the Almighty was, he wouldn't notice that she had just sent a reply. But Chin Mo leaned over, and pressed down on Fujio's hand. They were very close, so close that it seemed like he was going to press her down. "Secretly playing with your phone while I was sleeping." That voice was really nice, but at this moment, it made her feel that every inch of his breath that hit her ear was dangerous. "What did I say?" "Be obedient." Chin Mo freed his other hand and tapped the corner of the youngster's eye. "You don't want your eyes anymore, huh?" So it was about the eye inflammation. Fujio thought that the Almighty had noticed something. "I want them, Brother Mo, but I have to reply to your messages, right? For example, Baby Fong sent me a message yesterday. You know that Baby Fong needs to be taken care of. Manager Fong isn't here, so I have to take care of him. If I don't reply to his WeChat for a whole night, his heart will be fragile." There was a hint of coldness in Chin Mo's eyes. "You're right. Right?" Fujio felt that God was kind to her. She was smart and didn't reveal any flaws when facing the pressure of a god. Fujio didn't reveal any flaws, but she gave such an explanation. Chin Mo didn't like it very much. "Baby Fong, huh?" This form of address was quite intimate. He seemed to be very close to Feng Shang and Shui Yaoyao. At the thought of Shui Yaoyao's existence, he frowned subconsciously. Even the Almighty himself didn't know his expression at that time. "Of course I can't let you lose contact with others." Chin Mo's voice was calm as he took the phone from Fujio's hand. "What do you want to reply to him?" "I'll help you." Fujio. No matter how smart she was, she wouldn't have expected things to turn out this way. Why did the Almighty never play by the rules? At first, Chin Mo really wanted to reply to Feng Shang, but when he took the youngster's phone, he saw an eye-catching Weibo reply on the screen. "Brother Mo, what do you think we should do? Just when I thought I was a little straighter, you turned me gay again. This is not good, not good." At this moment, Chin Mo was so angry that he laughed. His lips curled up faintly. He straightened his body and stepped on the floor barefooted, like a god descending from the heavens. Afterward, "Your embarrassed expression is enough to make me laugh for a year. Keep it." Fujio, why was she so touched just now? The Almighty's purpose for memory was to watch her make a fool of herself. "Then I'll take another one." She was so handsome, she couldn't lose to the Almighty. This time, Chin Mo let Fujio be. The two of them were still in the same position, lying on the bed. The difference was that this time, Fujio included the Almighty. The first time the two of them took a photo together was, in bed, only Fujio and Chin Mo. One was rebellious, while the other was domineering and indifferent, thought nothing of it. Ordinary people would definitely think a lot when they saw that picture. Chapter 334. So handsome. Fu Jiu looked at the photo and whistled, with a devilish smile on her face. Just as she finished praising her handsomeness, the Almighty took away her phone and said in a deep voice, "Go drink your medicine." "My phone, confiscated." Chi Nemo stood up and walked back to his bed, probably to find something to wear. Fu Jiu's mood now was only comforting herself with good food. She also stood up and took her wallet. "Brother Mo, what do you want to eat?" "I'll go get it." Most hotels provided free breakfast, and it was a buffet. Especially in a star-rated hotel like this, the breakfast was even better. But there was still a charge to bring the food to the room. Chi Nemo buttoned up the last button on his shirt and immediately said in a businesslike manner, "Let's go together after I wash up." "Okay." Fu Jiu smiled, looking exceptionally handsome. Boys were different from girls. He said he was going to wash his face and rinse his mouth. Girls' washing up included eyeliner, eyebrows, BB cream, and other follow-up procedures. So it was definitely different in terms of time. In less than 3 minutes, the two of them walked out of the room and went down the elevator side by side. The hotel's restaurant was located in the lobby on the 2nd floor. Dark carpets covered the floor, and gorgeous chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Below the lights was an oval marble table, on which many colorful dishes were placed. There were Western food, Chinese food, and Japanese food. There were also fruits cut into flower shapes, which stretched down like a long dragon. In addition to these, there were also busy waiters. Because they were in Tokyo, they were also dressed as deacons. Some of them were pouring milk for the guests. They were wearing black suits and pure white gloves, which added a sense of gentleness to them. Hotel guests could choose food from here with the dining tickets in their room cards. Here, the food must be fresh. If no one came to pick it up after 10 minutes, the waiters would bring a new batch of food. Fu Jiu and Chi Nemo chose a distance from the floor-to-ceiling window. From this angle, they could see the most prosperous Tokyo streets outside the hotel. Their appearances naturally attracted many people's attention. In the past, Fu Jiu only felt that she was handsome, so she didn't feel much about it. But now that she was with this god, it was indeed. It was mainly because the Almighty looked like a noble young master who was here for morning tea. His every move exuded nobility. Compared to the Almighty, she ate a lot. She didn't know how the Almighty's stomach worked. He only ate so little. Chi Nemo also wanted to ask Fu Jiu this question. He glanced at the 3 empty plates in the youngster's hands and finally convinced himself that he was still growing in puberty. Otherwise, I really don't know where this guy puts his food. I'm not satisfied yet. Go get another plate of fried rice. Fu Jiu stuffed one hand into her pocket. She didn't feel like she ate much at all. Brother Mo, what else do you want? I'll bring it over. Chi Nemo thought about it and felt that the way some parents did things was good. They let their children do more things for them. This would give them a sense of achievement, right? Black tea. Okay. Chi Nemo looked at the youngster's tall and straight back, then casually looked at his phone screen. Spades's Weibo account hadn't been logged out, so it was obvious that he was tagging and commenting. It was quite interesting to watch. Chapter 336. Sister Turtle was not a fan of the CP. She also knew that there should be a deep brotherhood between esports players. Since the last incident, it could be seen that Almighty Chin was really good to their big spade. But someone called their big spade. Wasn't that too? Sister Turtle shook her head. As a professional woman, she didn't want to be like those cute high school students. She just needed to protect Big Spade. Sister Turtle thought about it and waited for the Weibo post about someone mentioned by Almighty Chin to be sent again. At this time, in a star hotel in Tokyo, Chin Mo's fingers moved, logged into his official Weibo, and posted the edited photo of the youngster. He edited a few words in a very simple tone. Both offensive and defensive are shown immediately. Sister Turtle's computer page stayed on Chin Mo's Weibo. When she saw the photo, she was completely stunned. In the photo, the silver-haired youngster looked at the camera with a smile. Even the curve of the corner of his mouth seemed to be smart and handsome. He squinted his left eye, looking very flirtatious. The black ear stud was very eye-catching. And Almighty Chin cooperated with the youngster, tilting his head down in a very domineering manner. His dark eyes seemed to be overflowing with light, and he even showed his collarbone. He was really aggressive. The two people's temperaments were completely different. In the photo, not only did it not erase their original advantages, but it also highlighted each other's nobility. They were so handsome that people just wanted to scream. But the photo also had special effects. The pair of hairy black devil ears on the top of the head was really beautiful. And they were using pillow, right? What was going on? Sister Turtle's hand holding the mouse was a little confused. Again, she really was not a fan of the CP. But if it kept going like this, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Such a photo with Almighty Chin's words was very meaningful. What was Almighty Chin doing? Even if he was giving out candy, it was not like this. His official Weibo would be blown up. It would indeed be blown up. Over there, the person who wanted to use the topic of Spade Z to become popular was still interacting with the 2 or 3 people who claimed to be Spade Z's fans, wanting others to recognize her. On this side, there was already a huge uproar. He was so handsome that the whole screen was flooded. F***CK, is there something wrong with my eyes? Group photo. A photo of us lying on the bed. Oh, so handsome. 2 demons, so handsome, so handsome. What should I do? Previous poster, you have no hope. Didn't you see the caption that the Almighty posted? The Almighty is on the left, and Spade is on the right. I don't want to say anything else. I just want to ask the Almighty, how long will you keep giving out sweets? I'm afraid my HP will be empty and I'll have a nosebleed. My heart is beating so fast after seeing this photo. Almighty, look at the way you're looking at Big Spade, it's so obvious. A long time ago, I had a crush on an esports guru. His Weibo was always posted every year. Moreover, it was a game guide. But now, he had changed. I don't want to tell you the reason, but as a single dog, I automatically accept this bowl of dog food. I really want to run 2 laps downstairs. My most beloved male god and my second most beloved male god are finally in the same frame. This situation. I actually feel so blessed. I want to be a CP fan. Chapter 337. After Chin Mo's fan mentioned it. Only then did the others realize that, indeed, the Almighty's Weibo was filled with Big Spade's Weibo, apart from the games that he had posted before. That's right, everything was about Big Spade. And if this had happened in the past? Posting photos. The Almighty even wanted to wear a black mask to cover his handsome face when he was playing. The media didn't dare to take pictures of him. But look at this. Why did the Almighty post photos? And he blocked all other voices with these 3 words in such a domineering manner. What was he trying to say? Everyone knew what he was trying to say. The Almighty didn't just say it when he said he would protect Big Spade last time. Thinking back to the replies someone had sent here, most of them understood what was going on. The Almighty is here to get revenge for Big Spade. I like this way of getting revenge. I hope the Almighty will come here more often in the future. Almighty Chin and my Big Spade are in the same frame. Seeing this, Sister Turtle reposted Chin Mo's Weibo without hesitation and tagged Fujio, attack, receive, immediately, show, poor my Big Spade, you are so handsome, but you still can't attack Almighty Chin. Spade's true fan saw Sister Turtle move, and he immediately followed. Attack, receive, immediately, show, touch my Big Spade, fight again next time. This basically depends on temperament. I firmly believe that my Big Spade is the attack, second only to one and above millions. Don't mess around, Almighty Chin just happens to be that one person. Chin Mo's fingers slid through the Weibo page, and he looked at those Spade's true fans tagging him, and the corner of his mouth curved up. That sentence, second only to one and above millions, Almighty Chin just happens to be that one person. It was inexplicably pleasing to the eye. Involuntarily, his fingertips moved, and he liked it. That Spade's fan, who never thought that she would be flipped, was stunned. Almighty Chin was really closer than she thought. Wow 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 wow. The Almighty gave me a like. The Almighty is saying that Big Spade is the attack. The Almighty is so black-bellied. I just want to know what my Big Spade can say. In the morning, you said I was so handsome, so I must be the attacker. Now I'm being attacked. Fujio had no idea what was going on the official Weibo account. She had a piece of hot toast in her mouth, one hand in her pocket, and the other hand was holding a tray. The food on the tray was especially sumptuous. You only eat fried rice. Chin Mo looked up from the phone screen and glanced at the youngster in front of him. The corners of Fujio's mouth curled up. Her smile was as bright as the sun, and it was hard to fade. I always feel hungry, it must be because of the lack of meat. It's also possible that I'm growing. Chin Mo's fingers were still moving. Remembering that the youngster was still in puberty, he frowned. Chapter 338. Chin Mo lifted his lids and leaned back, sitting elegantly on the chair. You want to know? Let's see. As he said this, he pushed the phone in front of the youngster with a faint smile on his face. Fujio raised her eyebrows and looked at the screen that hadn't dimmed yet. There was a photo with 4 words, attack, receive, immediate, present. And all the comments, all of which were pitying her, the receive. Receive. Didn't the little cuties see her fierce and aggressive eyes? The Almighty was indeed aggressive, but she wasn't bad either. Fujio's fingers paused. No wonder the Almighty, who didn't let her take the phone, pushed it away from her. It was all a trick. Fujio couldn't enjoy the handsome photo of herself and the Almighty anymore. What attack and receive? Chin Mo looked at the depressed face of the youngster with the toast in his mouth and smiled happily. Don't talk. Fujio pointed at him. Chin Mo was a big brother, so he wouldn't listen to his little brother. Your fans have good taste, especially when it comes to our positions. Brother Mo, you are exposed, I am exposed, so I am also on the offensive. Fujio took the tray as she spoke, using food to make up for this defeat. That photo on Weibo had already blown Lin Feng up. He asked Yunhu along the way, did Captain really sleep with Little Spade? What method did Little Spade use to get Captain to take a photo with him? And Captain even learned to say attack and receive. Shouldn't our team be full of straight men? Even if others are gay, Captain should be the representative of millions of straight men. You mean, can you be gay? Yunhu showed his room card and walked into the magnificent hall. Lin Feng shook his head immediately. No. Then shut up and take the food. Yunhu took a tray. Lin Feng fixed his eyes on it and strode towards Fu Jiu's table. He was first shocked by the number of empty plates on the table, and then he said to Qin Emo seriously, "Captain, I came to find Little Spade to eat together." "Little Spade, let's see what else you want to eat." If he wanted to ask questions, he had to drag him away alone. Fu Jiu wouldn't refuse good food, so she smiled and was about to get up. Qin Mo's voice was calm. "He has already eaten 7 plates, 1 toast and 3 glasses of juice. Are you sure you want him to continue eating?" These words were directed at Lin Feng. When those deep eyes looked at him again, there was a hint of pressure. Lin Feng immediately loosened his grip. Qin Mo raised the porcelain cup and took a sip of iced Americano. The chill immediately dissipated quite a bit. Since he couldn't pull them apart, Lin Feng could only beat around the bush. After all, the 2 main characters in the photo were there. "Little Spade, how did you sleep last night? Where's classmate Feng? Why don't I see him?" "That's right, don't know that Captain and the others are already in the same room." However, Fu Jiu replied to this question very meaningfully. She said in an evil tone, "Take a guess. Guess your sister. Was Little Spade his biological brother? If you're my brother, then tell me the truth." Lin Feng turned his face and kept communicating with Fu Jiu with his eyes. Fu Jiu held a piece of chewing gum in her mouth, and a bubble came out as she chewed. She looked so handsome, but she was asking for a beating. However, the captain didn't care about this guy. Chapter 339. Attack. Qin Mo raised his eyebrows and laughed. He said coldly, "It's the same whether you wear clothes or not. That face is too beautiful, so it'll be even worse if you take it off. Don't even think about it." Lin Feng. 10,000 points of critical hit. Fu Jiu couldn't help but laugh. Lin Feng felt that it wasn't suitable for him to stay here in this situation. Yun, who stood behind him, dragging 2 plates. "The whole team has pictures of you with your shirt off. How can you say that you are the attack?" Fu Jiu was interested. "Where? Let me see." Lin Feng pulled Yunhu over and said seriously, "Little Spade, I have something to discuss with your brother Yunhu. You and Captain can continue eating." How could he pull Yunhu with his strength? Yunhu could knock him down with one hand. But Yunhu liked to tease him, so he let Lin Feng pull him away. Fu Jiu saw that there was meat on the tray, and her eyes lit up. Unfortunately, the Almighty moved faster than her. He moved his fork and said calmly, "Let me help you destroy such a sinful thing. You want to see pictures of people with their shirts off? Ha, my brother's interests are really different. Actually, I only want to see Brother Mo's." Fu Jiu smiled and blinked her left eye. "So, Brother Mo, you can give me your phone and let me see it again." Qin Mo was not moved at all. "Your eyes are red, and you still want to take your phone. If you want to see it so much, I'll take it off in my room." Fu Jiu paused slowly. The Almighty was so cunning and not easy to deal with. And she didn't know if it was because she always flirted with him, but he was getting better at avoiding flirting. Fu Jiu was still a little depressed. Yunhu and Lin Feng came with other team members. Because today was the last day of training, everyone was wearing a very handsome combat uniform. This attracted a lot of attention from the diners. They could vaguely hear people talking in Japanese. "Are they sports players?" "It seems so. Every one of them looks very imposing. Unfortunately, they are not from Tokyo. There is a handsome young man over there, like a character from a manga. Esports was very popular in Tokyo." Even Lin Feng, a big man, felt that he was being watched. However, today, Secretary Liang really wasn't in the mood to replace Manager Feng and lead the Supreme Alliance to the training. He was standing at the entrance of the hotel restaurant. His expression was so conflicted that he didn't look like the capable and handsome CEO's assistant that he usually was. Who could tell him what the situation was? Their CEO. President Qin, who was so cold that he could freeze people to death, and no one in Jiang City dared to take a picture of him, was now on the hot search list. There were still 2 people in the photo, and both of them were extremely handsome. But Secretary Liang really couldn't appreciate that handsomeness. First, he made an international call to someone he knew, and with great difficulty, he suppressed the popularity on Weibo. In the end, Madam had called him. To call him at this time, it would be strange if Manager Feng did not feel conflicted. The waiter at the side couldn't stand it anymore. He stepped forward politely and asked, "Sir, is there anything we can help you with?" At first, the waiter spoke in Dongjing dialect. Seeing that Secretary Liang was still frowning, he repeated it in English. Only then did Secretary Liang realize that there were still people around. He immediately smiled warmly. "Thank you, but no, it's a phone call." As he spoke, Secretary Liang took a step and walked towards a quiet place. "You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.